going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round one prize picks preview for the American Express. Going to break down this golf course, what to expect from all three tracks this week. There's actually three separate courses. One main course we'll focus on, but want to give you an idea of how they'll all play, but more importantly, also my top three prize picks targets that I'll be going after and playing here in round one. So let's start with the main course, which is the stadium course this week. It is the quote-unquote most difficult out of the three, but still plays well under par to a 1.43 stroke under par average. You take a look at some of the ball striking stats, the fairway percentage is a little bit lower here than what you're used to seeing, right around 60.7%. Now that equates to right around 8.5 fairways hit on average for the field. So when we take a look at the prize picks board later, that's going to be an especially important metric. So remember, 8.5 is the average. Take a look at the greens regulation. The average was 69.9%, which that equates to right around a 12.6 green and regulation average. So when you're taking a look at the prize picks board, that's what your average player went out there and did. And of course, based on a player's baseline, when it comes to either their iron play or their off the tee play, you can make adjustments based on that. The other two courses are La Quinta, then you also have the Nicklaus course. Both of those play a little bit easier than what you see for the stadium course. Far fewer bogeys at La Quinta. At the Nicklaus course, you also have a bunch of birdies that are going to be made. While on prize picks, all of the props that we're going to have for birdies are better, strokes, fairways hit, all of these are going to be for the stadium course. Over here for birdies are better, and over there on Underdog, if you're playing any of their props, they're going to have some of the La Quinta players on there, a few of the Nicklaus tournament course players on there too. They have it down as LQ on here, NT for the Nicklaus course on prize picks. And on Underdog, just make sure you're checking the leaderboard so you know what course that you're betting on. So I know some people use this analysis, this sort of research, to not just play on prize picks and whatnot. Keep in mind that there are three separate courses to choose from, just a little bit more simple on prize picks where they've narrowed it down to one. Now looking at the weather for Thursday, it looks like it's going to be beautiful early. They're going to be teeing off right around 8 a.m. local time. The last set of tee times right around 10:30 a.m. So all the way until like 1 to 2 p.m., you're going to be looking at next to no wind between 3 to 5 miles an hour, which means that these players are going to have no problems going out there and finding success. Now towards the end, they'll be finishing up, I'd imagine, right around like 4 p.m. You can see the winds in terms of sustained winds aren't really getting up there. They're still just 1 to 7 miles an hour, but you are starting to get a few gusts, right, towards the last hour, maybe hour and a half of play tomorrow. It might get a little bit more windy, but not enough to throw off these players drastically, particularly the guys that are going off a little bit earlier. And now when we take a look at prize picks, the one real category I want to focus on, we'll do it at the end. I want to go through some of the other categories first here. It's going to be fairways hit because I think it's mispriced. You take a look at the birdie or better board, it's relatively accurate. Last year, the birdie or better average was 4.189 for the stadium course. So when you're taking a look here, some of your slightly better than average players like a Keith Mitchell, Sebastian Munoz, I consider they're taking their overs there at 4.5 birdies, but a lot of the other guys on the board, like a Bazanehoot, English, for example, a Luke List or Russell Knox, that's about the right number for every single one of them. I project them for pretty much on the dot there, right at 4.5 birdies. So there's a few leans here I'd take. I mean, the guys at 5, I think it's an adequate price tag as well. For strokes, I'll remind you the average was 70.57, right? It was 1.43 shots under. Now it's been especially soft. They're going to have especially low winds here for Thursday as well. So it might play a little bit easier, maybe closer to something like a 70 average. There's a few guys at 70.5, even a List, a Zanehoot, a Munoz there at 70 that I consider taking unders on. It's just they bring a lot of push equity to the table, right? If the average is going to be 2 under par, a lot of these players are going to end up pushing, and I'm looking for wins, not necessarily pushes out there. A few of the guys at 69.5, I have to say that, like a Cam Davis, Wise, a Hoagie, even a Sam Burns at 69. I prefer taking them on the strokes board than I would the birdie or better. Getting to 6 birdies, 7 birdies to try and cover something like that out there is especially difficult. But given there's only going to be about 1.5, maybe 1.7 birdies or bogeys made on average for the field out there. These top end players, I don't hate so much from the strokes board. They're obviously higher end talents. They're going to make less bogeys than the rest of the field, which is going to be conducive to scoring there. Heading over to greens and regulation, If you recall, the average was 69.9%, which for the 18 greens of regulation was going to be a 12.6 average. A lot of the players at 12.5 are a little bit volatile. Now, like Lee, I consider taking his over at 12.5. Munoz is a pretty solid iron player over at 12.5. At 13, you have some of the elite tier iron players, which again, I think it's just a fair projection. And at 13.5, that's just asking too much. I wouldn't be fading a Burns or a Knox though, so not a ton of bets for greens regulation I like. What I love here is the fairway board, and it's relatively straightforward, guys. The average was 60.7%. If you recall, that's 8.5 fairways hit. The average here is not at 8.5. In fact, they bumped a lot of this board. I already had a Russell Knox at 8.5 fairways, a Zach Johnson at 8.5, and down here I had an Aaron Wise at 7.5 fairways. The average is 8.5. And these sort of players, and especially when you look at an Aaron Wise, I think it was the most egregious example. And honestly, I would still take his over here at 8 fairways hit. I'm going to add him to the board here. He averages over the PGA Tour average. And this is what I want to show you here, okay? So this is the driving accuracy board over here on PGAtour.com for last season, right? So we're getting a big sample size here for a lot of these players. The average on tour was 59.78%. So it's actually a little bit lower than what you're used to seeing here, about like 8.4 fairways, so not that far off. So let's look it up. Aaron Wise, right? So Aaron Wise on here. Let's find the other Aaron. There he is. They're 115th. So it's not like he's one of the more accurate players that you have on the PGA Tour. Actually, just slightly lower than the PGA Tour average. But if you take slightly lower than the average at this course, that's 8.3, 8.4 fairways hit, right? If you take the difference between the average on tour and then his average last year, and then take that same difference and equate it to the average at this course for what he should shoot this week in terms of his fairway percentage, it's like 8.4 fairways hit, right? So for somebody like Aaron Wise over here at 7.5 fairways, I mean, that was just like absolutely free, right? It's not like we're projecting him for like 9 or 10 fairways, but even with, a projection here at 8, we have that push in our back pocket, let alone all the opportunity for him to go over, given how easy the conditions are tomorrow, how soft it is with all the rain that's come through the area over the last week. So I still like an Aaron Wise, but I especially like guys like a Lee, Keith Mitchell, and Christian Bezainhu, who all three of these players I like even more than Wise now, because obviously Wise got bumped. I liked him a ton when he was at 7.5, because they're better than average accuracy players. So if we go over here and search these guys up, so let's find Lee to begin. So let's type in Lee. Let's find KH. Oh, there he was. First Lee to come up, right? It's a 62.15% chance of hitting the fairway last year, which was number 61 on tour, which again isn't elite stuff, but that's still better than your average player. So what is that? Nearly 3% higher than the average on tour. Okay, well 3% higher than what you're averaging here is like 8.8 fairways, right? And he's at 8, so we get that push in our back pocket, let alone all of the chance for him to go over. Next one up, Keith Mitchell, which a lot of people, Keith Mitchell hits it a long way. So a lot of people don't think he's the most accurate player. Well, he still hit just under 62% last year. So kind of similar to what you're getting with a Lee. Maybe projecting him for closer to like 8.7 fairways as opposed to the 8.8 there, but you get the point. And lastly, we have Bezainhu. So we've typed Seabez in there, find Bezainhu. Where is he at? There he is. He's number 57 on the PGA Tour when it came to accuracy last year. 62.4%. Same story there. Projected him for closer to like 8.85, maybe even 8.9 fairways at this sort of golf course, which I think just makes it an inefficient line. If it was the 8.5 fairway line, it'd be a different story. But given that we have that push in our back pocket, I absolutely love the overs on these. If you're going to play as a flex play, because you can see the payout difference is only 1.5x between the two. And if you go down to a flex play, you're getting your money back. You're getting 3 out of 4. So I'd recommend going that direction, or just playing 2 out of the 4, right? Maybe splitting it up into 2-3 different cards and running it for the full 3x payout. If I had to pick my 2 favorites, it probably would be a Lee and a Keith Mitchell out of this list, just because, an Aaron Wise ended up getting bumped, and somebody like a Christian Bezainhu, is a little bit of a volatile player, but I still love all 4 of the overs there. And, I mentioned a few others, right? Like the Lee over in greens and regulation. I ended up liking that prop. Going over, let's see, were there a few others? No, greens and regulation, that was really the only one that I loved there. Let's go, the strokes. Like I said, a few of the top end guys. Like if you wanted to take a Cam Davis or a Hoagie, like they're under on strokes there aren't the worst idea in human history. And then in terms of birdies or better, it's really, unless you're going to a Keith Mitchell or a Munoz here, I would fade it. I think a lot of the projections for birdies or better are pretty accurate when it comes to this golf course, but there is a huge opportunity to be had when it comes to this fairway board. So that's all I've got here, guys. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared to go out there and bet here for round one. If you're looking for access to all of my write-ups as soon as they drop, right before something like an Aaron Wise ends up getting bumped, the Johnson and Knox up to 9 fairways, then check out my Patreon page. On there, I'm always posting all of my props, all of the analysis, all of the research that I'm putting into them, a thought process, so on and so forth, how I'm structuring my cards on there to give you a complete idea of what I'm expecting here for the next day. I don't only just do that for round one, I do it for rounds 2 through 4. So if you're looking for all of my, write-ups, right, you see me do one for round one every single week. Well, if you want rounds 2 through 4, that's where it's going to be. And if you want the full list of props that I'm playing, whether it's for underdog or over here on Prize Picks, that's where you can get all of that info. But link is in the description to that. I really appreciate all the support here, guys. Even if you're not joining the Patreon, you can hit me up on Discord over there on the Prize Picks Discord. I'm willing to answer questions. And you can toss slips off me, right? I can give you my thoughts on it on that side. But if you do want those picks, make sure to check out the Patreon. Hit that like button before you hop on out of here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss any of that content in the future. I appreciate it. Best of luck.